City Commission meeting of the City of St. Pete Beach. Today is Tuesday, April 22nd, 2025. It is 6 p.m. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. City Clerk, if you'll please do a roll call.
Commissioner Mulholland?
Yeah, here.
Commissioner Reznicki? Here. Commissioner Robinson?
Here.
Vice Mayor Marriott?
Here.
Mayor Petrilla?
Here.
A quorum is present. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to open this meeting in honor of a longtime St. Pete Beach resident employee. Bonnie worked at the St. Pete Beach Library for more than 23 years, and she passed away recently after a short illness on April 8th. Bonnie loved working at the library. She loved serving her community. And year after year with smiles and the knowledge that comes from being an avid reader. Bonnie and her husband, Steve, served the community in many capacities over the years. And we offer our condolences to the family and to the friends of Bonnie. And if we can please take just a moment of silence. Thank you. We're going to begin this evening with a couple of presentations. The first one is the recognition of Outstanding Explorers Club participants.
Hi, my name is Andrea Nicholson. I am the child care coordinator for the city, and I really want to tell everybody thank you very much for welcoming us to this meeting. My Good Citizens of the Year, the criteria is based on something real simple. It's be a positive influence, be helpful, be cheerful, and maybe give us a little grief. And both of my candidates have done so perfectly this year. So without further ado, I would like to please introduce my first good citizen, Mabel Mladenick. Please come on up. I first noticed Mabel when she came to us in kindergarten. She ran or skipped everywhere she went, everywhere she went. She can skip backwards. I was wishing then, as I do now, that I could capture her undying energy. Her spirit is as enticing. Mabel is always smiling. She's a happy, positive child in this group, and she gets along with everyone. When she's asked to give a hand with anything, she does so with a smile and without any hesitation whatsoever. And I just got to tell you, we have asked her to do a ridiculous amount of help for us this school year. Mabel's smart. She's a funny girl who isn't afraid to ask us any questions. She spreads her joy and infectious smile to those of us in her presence every single day. Mabel, thank you for your willingness to help, your great stories, your engaging smile, your happy disposition, and your top-notch energy. It is absolutely fun to be in your presence. Congratulations, and thank you for being this year's Good Citizen.
Good job. Congratulations.
Nico Hughes is the other recipient. Nico, please come on up. Wow. Nico came to our program a few years ago as a very high-spirited boy. We were immediately equally charmed and frustrated by him. He managed, however, in very, very short order to wholly win us over with his engaging smile, his raspy voice, his willingness to help the littles, the coaches, his peers, his ability to get along with everyone, his steady presence, and his tolerance for us coaches. Nico's fun personality, awe-striking self-confidence, and funky style make our program way more fun and a little more easy to run when he takes up tasks we know we can count on him for, such as walking the littles to the restroom, helping with attendance, picking up stray balls, and occasionally kicking them into the water, and running gym games, just to name a few. Nico, we absolutely love having you in Explorers Club. We're grateful for your help and your demeanor. I mean, what would we do if everyone was well-behaved all the time and boring? Thank you for being a wonderful asset to our program and for being this year's Good Citizen. You got it? Yep. All right.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Congratulations.
Thank you again for welcoming us tonight.
Thank you. Next, we have a presentation on the Paso Grillo Shuffleboard and Mary Pier Bait Shack update. And I also have a request, if there are no objections from the commissioners, to also open it up for public comment after the presentation. I think we have a lot of residents here eager to speak on this issue.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners, Charter officials. For the record, my name is Camden Mills, and I serve as your Public Services Director. Appreciate the opportunity tonight to give an update currently where we're at with these two facilities, our shuffleboard building and our Mary Pier Bait Shack. And really, we want to just give you the details of the information we have on hand currently, and then seek your direction for moving forward. First off, we want to talk about our shuffleboard club building. This is located down at 9th Avenue in Paso Grillo, and this facility is registered as historically designated. Our shuffleboard building was determined to be substantially damaged by our building official. Replacement estimates that we've received so far are in the range of $176,000. To date, we have received just under $83,000 from our insurance. I'd like to point out this is just the payout that we've received so far, not the final determination, so we are still coordinating with insurance to try and get some more money there. We have completed our site inspections with FEMA for this facility. We presented to the Historical Preservation Board back in January, and at that meeting there was a 5-0 vote in favor of demolition of this structure. Currently, the replacement valuation from our insurance is $102,000, but as I mentioned, as shown in this slide, the contractor estimate that we've had so far is around $176,000. We have solicited quotes for demolition, and the lowest, most responsive quote that we've received was just over $8,000. So these are kind of the values of where we stand currently on the shuffleboard building. Next, I'd like to talk about Mary Pier Bait Shack. This one's located down at 801 Paso Grillo Way. This structure is not historically designated. From my understanding, this structure was built in 1979. The site itself of Mary Pier does have a historical marker, but the building itself does not. Similar to the Shuffleboard Club building, our building official determined this structure to be substantially damaged. We do have an appraised valuation of just under $75,000. I'd like to note that this appraisal is from our insurance company. This is not a private appraisal that was done. We have repair estimates from contractor Cotton Global at $96,000. This repair estimate does replace, the flooring and some repairs to the roof and the walls. It does not include plumbing replacement, so we wouldn't be proposing to bring the restroom back in that facility based on the estimate that we have on hand right now. We've received just over $62,000 from our insurance company or insurance provider so far, and similar to the shuffleboard, we solicited for quotes on the demolition. We received 3, and the lowest, most responsive quote to demo this facility was just over $65,000. The reason why the demolition cost of this structure is so much higher is just due to the complications of the building being over water and the intricacies of taking that apart without having any adverse impacts to the environment. We completed our site inspection with FEMA on the 13th of March. As I mentioned, this appraised value shown on this slide is based on what our insurance has given us. So if you guys wish to do so, we could pursue getting a private appraisal just to confirm what that value would be at. As we're looking at these facilities and considering, what we want to do for next steps, several aspects we took into consideration. First and foremost is public health and safety. In their current condition, these structures both pose a hazard. So as we're approaching storm season, I think that's something important to consider. Second is community impact. I know a lot of residents have reached out to me personally, and I'm sure they've reached out to you as well of their interest of having these facilities repaired and back in use. So I think that is very important that we consider the impact that this has on the community, the historical nature of both of these facilities, and the wants to have these being functional. Permitting constraints, that's something we have to consider. With the Mary Pier structure, it's a commercial building that's subject to the 50% rule, similar like what we were looking at with our residential properties. With that 50% rule, what that would mean is that our repair cost would need to fall below or at or below 50% value of the building structure. Some constraints that we're evaluating with the permitting is with the State Environmental Protection Agency, since this structure is over water. Currently in place, there is an emergency declaration that allows for state permit exemptions, and that exemption is in place up until the end of May. So at May 31st is when that exemption criteria ends. So if we were to do any demolition or repair work within that time frame, we would be able to keep that exemption. Otherwise, we would have to go through the process of permitting with DEP since the structure is over water. We also have a county permit for this structure, and they allow for up to 2 years you can repair the facility from the storm damage impact. So that's something we considered as well. Also bringing up to construction codes. As we repair these facilities, we need to make sure that they're meeting the current standards of the Florida Building Code, and really evaluating that FEMA 50% rule. It's important to note that the Mary Pier facility is in the VE flood zone, which is the velocity flood zone. So if we were to demo this structure, rebuilding a new structure would not be an option. Based on what we've heard from FEMA so far. So the shuffleboard shack is in a different situation where if we did demo that, we could replace it and rebuild it, but if the Mary Pier was determined that we were going to demolish it, it would not be rebuilt. And then also a consideration is time and cost. As we're working through these FEMA funding projects, that's funding that we may not see back, in up to 3 to 5 years. So tonight we'd like to ask for your direction on how you would prefer we proceed with our next steps. If demolition is the direction you want to go for these facilities, we can be prepared to bring those contracts forward to you guys in May for review and approval. One thing we would have to consider is the existing lease agreement we have for that bait shack at Mary Pier. Currently that is going to be up for renewal soon, so that'll be something we'll need to consider as well. And then whether we want to rebuild these structures or not, something we definitely have to take into the balance as we look at the city as a whole and all the priorities that we have from the different impacts from these storms. So I would note, with Mary Pier, really our options are do we want to move forward with demoing the structure, or do we want to continue to explore options to see if repairing it under that 50% rule is a feasible option or not? And then with the shuffleboard court, one, do we want to demo that now? And then two, do we want to plan for a rebuild or wait and consider that over time? So that's currently where we stand today. With that, I'd be open to any comments or direction.
Okay. Questions? They don't work.
Mine works.
Yours was on red. The other- Go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. So I've got a lot of comments and a few questions here, and a little hard to gather them all up. But first of all, I want to say that thank you very much for all the efforts that you've made for this city since you've been in your position. You've been absolutely incredible. I do want to also say that I hope that you don't let that go to your head and you get complacent, because that oftentimes happens when people get too many compliments. But you've been, under the circumstances, you've been absolutely wonderful in carrying out your duties in your position. So I do want to publicly state that, but I also want to say, don't let that go to your head.
Yes, I appreciate that.
Specific to these matters, the community wants both these structures rebuilt in some form, shape, or fashion, if at all possible. So I'm probably going to shotgun it here a little bit with you, and it may not come across as smoothly as I'd like it to, but as it relates to Mary Pier, it's my understanding that the city is going to request a new appraisal on the damage to the property. Is that correct?
If you guys provide that direction, we can do that.
Okay, so meaning the commission provides that?
Correct.
Okay, well, I'm only one person here, but I certainly would recommend that we do that. And what does that do? Not dissimilar to what individual residents have had the ability to do with reappraisals of their home. Is if a property is not appraised as high as it should be, the reappraisal creates a new value on the structure that then makes the 50% rule easier to obtain. Is that correct?
That is correct, and I've confirmed that with our building official.
Okay. So I would absolutely ask that the city continue on with that endeavor, that we do get a new appraisal, because once again, I do think that the Mary Pier facility from a culture, or not cultural, but from a community perspective, is important to a lot of people. So I would ask that we move forward with that. There are a number of waterfront properties, not only in Florida, but nationwide, that are oftentimes classified as working waterfront properties. Not dissimilar to historic properties, but similar in so much as like, hey, this property has been a pier, or it's been this or that, and it's been over or near water and the dangers that come with that. I would also ask that we explore the possibility that the Mary Pier bait shop somehow fits within that niche of a working waterfront property. I know we've had many properties in the city, particularly in Paso Grill, and I know the chairman of the Historic Preservation Board probably will cringe when I say this, but essentially we've been able to retroactively designate, or not designate, but assign historic properties as historic properties. I wonder if that option is available for the Mary Pier Bait Shop. Is it possible that we could retroactively somehow get working waterfront consideration for that property? And I don't suspect you know the answer to that, but before we decide to bring a crane in there or backhoe or whatever we got to bring in there to tear that place down, I would like to see us explore that option.
Okay.
Would it not have to be over 50 years old?
Working waterfront
It's a
is,
separate program, working
Or
water.
the historic designation? The historic designation?
The historic designation, one of the criteria is over 50 years old. I believe it was originally built in 1979, but it's had some modifications to it. So we'd have to have an in-depth historical resource analysis. Working waterfront is separate. It's about businesses that are
Sure.
on the water.
So we have a few years before we can do historic, but we could take a look at the other, at the working waterfront.
yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody's going to argue as it relates to the Mary Pier, even though I thought that it was probably historical. It's not.
It's not old enough yet, but it.
No, it's
could
not
be
old enough
historic
yet.
Without
But-
being able to be designated.
Here is, but not the bait shop.
Right, okay, but if the bait shop has the option for working waterfront, I think that's another option that we should consider. The community wants the bait shop to live. I mean, I feel very confident in saying that the community wants that. And, you know, it may be that we get to the point where it just has to be knocked down. But like so many other residents that were able to be historic or find whatever reappraisals or whatever in order, I mean, when we sat here 6.5, 7 months ago, I can't quote the number, but whatever number of homes that we thought we were going to have to knock down in this city at that point in time, 7 months ago, ended up being many less than where we are today. Now, it doesn't make anybody that had to knock their home down feel any better, but the reality is that through reassessments and through historical designations, a lot of people were able to stay in their homes that they otherwise, or rebuild their homes, I should say, or their properties, that they otherwise would not have been able to do. And I think both these properties, based on the significance that they have to the Paso Grill community, deserve the same treatment. And I would ask that we do that before we bring a excavator in there or whatever we have to do, because it's over the water, to knock it down. So I would ask that we explore that before we come back to the commission and ask for a vote to destroy it.
Okay.
That's my position on that. As it relates to the shuffleboard, or the shuffleboard clubhouse, it is historical. There's really not a lot to it. It just kind of looks like an old frame structure, and as most of you know, budget and money is always an issue with me when I'm looking at things, but just throwing some mud against the wall here, I kind of feel like that the path forward for the shuffleboard, and there may be many people in the resident or in the audience that disagree with this, but that we ought to try to maintain the roof structure and whatever else we need to preserve the historic preservation part of it. But really, at the end of the day, if we could just turn that into an enclosed bathroom facility with an open, covered seating facility for people that wanted or were using the shuffleboard, to be able to get in and out of the sun and, escape the heat, it would seem to be a way that might be more cost-effective, because money is an issue right now. But if we preserve the restrooms in that facility, it allows us maybe more flexibility on our budget as it relates to Mary Pier, because the two are close enough to one another that, maybe Mary Pier needs to have a restroom within a certain distance of the facility or whatever. The shuffleboard's, 400 feet, 300 feet from Mary Pier. So I kind of look at both of them intertwined, but what I do know is they represent a value to the community. We're not talking big money, no matter what we do here, in relation to what we spend on a lot of other stuff that, in my opinion, is probably stuff we shouldn't be spending money on. That we should try to salvage both these facilities with the options that may be available to us, as we've done with many residential and business communities within the city over the last 7 months. So I'm sure I've left things out, but I did want to say my piece as it related to all that, and I would ask you, you and the commission, to consider all these things and hopefully allow the city to do a little more research on this before we bring the excavators in. And the last thing, there is certainly a group within the community that's willing to put their money where their mouth is. I will say this, I had similar comments as it related to repairing the concession stand at the Little League baseball park, and when it came time to put their money up and their efforts up, they got short arms on me. So I'm just being totally transparent that I say that people are willing to step forward and help the city allow these facilities to exist. I will say that my principal point of contact with these particular matters, I have the absolute utmost confidence in his integrity and his pulse for the community. So I truly do believe the community not only wants it, but will step up for it. But we need the city to do what they need to do as it relates to the new appraisals and some of those things to move that ball forward. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. I may have more on this before we close it, but I hope I've covered most of what I felt I needed to.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I have a question, too.
Go ahead.
Can you put your slides back up for repair costs real quick? Okay, just, am I reading this wrong? Replacement estimates is $210,000?
Yeah, you had a repair cost of $90,000?
I've since, just today we got new numbers since this was published. So previously what you see here is a replacement estimate of 210. That would be not only to repair it up to current standards, but also to flood-proof the building if we were to try to make it FEMA 50% compliant. The $96,000 value that I referenced today would be a repair just to bring it to minimal use, where essentially the building is, just a shell structure that doesn't have plumbing and restrooms any longer.
Okay, because I was doing the math off of mine, and it needs to be done. Okay. And then will you pull up the other one for the via shuffleboard? Did that change too, right? Because I had replacement estimate as 101, and this is 176.
So the 101 estimate was a replacement value estimated by our insurance company. The 176 shown is based on a contractor's estimate that we received.
And that was for a freestanding building?
Basically to replace it similar, like for like, but up to current codes. Yep. So it'd be, yes, a freestanding building.
Seems like a lot to me.
And if we wanted to, I'm sorry, if we wanted to do something similar to what Commissioner Mulholland proposed, which would be, an open air structure without walls, with the exception of 2 bathrooms, would that, that should significantly reduce the cost, right?
That should be a reduction in cost, yes.
Yeah, there might be a better design plan, maybe, something that would still work.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, if that direction was to seek, more repair option costs, we would pursue multiple different estimates, yeah.
Are there any FEMA funds coming from either of these properties?
Both of these projects do have FEMA projects created for them, so we are pursuing that option. If we were, we have some different options there through the FEMA process. If we were to demo and not rebuild, we could still collect on what that would be worth and put that money to a different project. FEMA calls that like an alternative project use, so that is an option. But we are pursuing a FEMA claim on both of these structures.
On both of them, okay.
Commissioner Woznicki?
I don't know, this is just a silly question to ask, but fundraising to help in any of this? I mean, or can the city do or private citizens do GoFundMes for projects like these to help assist with the cost?
I think that would be feasible, yeah.
Because if they hold that dear value, and as well, maybe it's something that would help to offset some of those costs. Because originally I was looking at the original numbers and they weren't substantial, but looking at some of these other numbers, and they grew quite a bit. Just, as everybody's aware, there's little funds, or there's a lot of items requiring a lot of funds, should I say. Thank you.
Commissioner Woznicki?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. For the shuffleboard, since it's designated historic, any modification of what it is right now would that remove the designation? And just because I'm hearing the commissioners talking about altering it and making it a shelter or a bathroom, when it's locally designated, are we supposed to bring it back to what it was and not make alterations? Because and then that would be considered a new build. A question, I'm not sure.
Yeah, but my understanding is since it is historically designated, you would bring it back to its condition prior to, but historic designation isn't, exactly my wheelhouse, so I would need to do a little more research on that to see what our options are.
Because if that's the case, then this would have to meet the 50%, right? Because you would be demolishing and rebuilding. It wouldn't be historic anymore, if we're building something else. And I only say this because, when you listen to when a building or a structure or whatever it may be becomes historical, it could be for architectural. And, looking at it doesn't ring to me an architectural design or feature that we want to keep. But what the significance is the community and the historical significance of what it was used. And if what we're trying to preserve is the historical significance of what it was used for, demolishing and building something that would sustain another upcoming storm, a flood, or whatever it may be, provide bathrooms, shelter, or whatever is needed for that shuffleboard area or whatever the community is looking for, to me would seem more reasonable because we're making it more resilient. And then the money that's being brought from insurance or donations from, you know, how Howard's saying, and I think I read from an email from someone, and I think the chair of the historic board had mentioned that he could find money for these projects, then we could build something more resilient. So that's my comment on that. Then for the Mary Pier, almost same thing, because it is not historic or designated historic, but the pier is. And we're kind of pressed for time and the expense, and everybody knows you get a bid from a contractor, and that will change in a couple of weeks. A lot is going, you know, around in the United States that can cause a change in prices very quick on materials. So what could be 176 there, but was 101 2 days ago, can become 250, and you know, the prices will keep changing, codes would need to be met, we might not make deadlines. Again, to preserve the intention of what it's for, what the community likes about it, I mean, I'm in favor of building something that's gonna be more resilient, you know, and I know what we're trying to save is because it's over the water, and, you know, why not build it off the water? You know, knock out 3 parking spaces or whatever it is in front of it and put it on the ground in front of the pier. Just an idea, because I'm trying to think out of the box. Again, if what we're trying to save is what brings people there, why not do it another way where we could spend the money on something that would be more resilient versus, you know, risking, you know, everybody's been hearing the weather forecasts, right? Things coming in the future. This would all be wiped out again pretty quick. So that's my comment.
So we probably ought to rebuild the whole city, really.
Well, I don't say that. Everybody makes their choices, but again, this is money that is from taxpayers, right? And being, I'm not saying get rid of it. I'm saying build it more
Insurance
resilient.
and contributors within the community.
Right, but when you see the insurance payout, it's not going to pay out the whole entire amount. So, and like you said, arms got short, right? So do we wait for the money to be up front before everyone's arms get short again?
Well, I'm all for elevating the whole city 11 feet, to be perfectly honest with you. So if we can figure out a way to budget that and to build 8-foot seawalls, I'm all for that. In fact, I propose that we have a new seawall ordinance or update the seawall ordinance where you couldn't make improvements until you had an updated seawall, but I didn't have any support for that. So, you know, we're either going to deal with the realities or we're going to do nothing.
I think we should hear from the community. Do we have any public comments?
We do. I have a Peter Kuhlman.
Great. If you would like to speak on this issue or any other topic in the general audience comments or a future topic, there are yellow cards in the back. You can fill those out, and please bring them forward to the city clerk. You will have 3 uninterrupted minutes to let us know what's on your mind. And when you come up, if you'll please state your name and address for the record, we certainly would appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Good. Thank you, Mayor Petrilla, and thank you, commissioners, for hearing me out. My name is Peter Kuhlman. I live at 288 Elton Drive, Viña del Mar, and my family and I, have been continuous residents and taxpayers for 44 years.
We might
Can
need
you
a
stop
second.
my 3-minute clock for this?
Yeah.
It's a Miami-Dade County Amber Alert.
Sorry about that.
Good. No, so I can appreciate the challenges facing the city, and I heard Mr. Mills speak, and what I was hearing about, it's all about the money. You know, the lure and charm of Paso Grill has been sort of centered on, you go to 8th Avenue, you see the Seahorse, Mary Pier, Evander Preston's building, and the shuffleboard courts. The shuffleboard courts themselves are expensive infrastructure. You know, to pour that concrete, 63 feet long, smooth, there are 8 courts there. That's not a cheap thing. You cannot play shuffleboard unless you have a place to store equipment. The Paso Grill Shuffleboard Club, where I've played on and off since the mid-'80s, maintains the building, provides equipment for public use, keeps the bathrooms clean. And this is a city with very woefully few public structures that are in the city domain. This building came by barge in the 1920s from Gulfport. You know, to just level it and put some concrete pylons on and a roof and make it a public toilet. You know, you can just take the name historic out of historic Paso Grill. If you get rid of this, you get rid of that. So I think some effort should be made in this case to try to bring this building back to life. Now, I'm not an engineer, but I am a common sense person who has restored a couple of old wooden buildings in my life. And if you look at that structure, and I'm there 3 times a week and I see it up close, the slab is intact, the roof is intact. One wall was knocked out. The quote of $176,000 is $350 a foot for what really is a kind of a garage. It has no interior walls. It just has studs, lap siding, you know, some minimal electrical. The bathrooms seem to be intact. I mean, I would posit to you that 2 or 3 carpenters working for 10 days with a few $1,000s worth of materials will be able to fix that building. Now, if you want to take the $86,000 from the insurance and go spend it somewhere else, that's not something that I could control, but I think it's within the city's means to bring the building back to life as a historic structure. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mary Shackey.
If you'll please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, I will. My name is Mary Shockey. I live in St. Petersburg, 2408 16th Street North. But my great-great-aunt brought a cottage to 4th Avenue on probably a similar barge to the shuffleboard court in about 1923. She came in 1895 and was a very important resident of St. Pete and then moved to Paso Grill. So our family has been connected to Paso Grill for all these generations. My grandsons and granddaughter played shuffleboard this morning. My daughter-in-law bought new tangs and tiles for me so that we could all play, because that's not possible anymore because those the equipment is not available. I certainly agree with my predecessor to Peter that this building could undoubtedly be repaired and brought back to life, and $86,000, part of it at least, could go to other structures. The shuffleboard courts, when you drive by them, they're often empty, but often you go by and there are 25 people playing and another 25 or 30 sitting around and enjoying the atmosphere. And I think it's really that park lives with the shuffleboard courts. There's not a lot other happening between the beach and the bay, so it is really a great asset to downtown Paso Grill. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bill Lowry.
If you'll please state your name and address for the record.
Lowry, 2405 Paso Grill Way. I'm here as an individual, not from the historic board. First off, I'd like to, since I only got 3 minutes, I'm going to be pretty direct. I would suggest we obviously get a new appraisal on the Mary Pier. I've been down there. I've had a contractor down there. It is structurally sound, okay? What's happened is when the water came up, it pushed the plywood off the floor joist, and then it flood-proofed itself because the water ran back out. And so really, it's the floor. Contractor went down there just today. We looked all over it. Estimates about $3,000 in materials to fix the floor. Electrical, I'm not sure. I'd like the city, well, yeah, and the walls, thank you. I'd like the city to give me a better idea of what they think the electrical is going to cost. I've been down there with other folks. You know, I really think it's overestimated what it's going to cost to fix that place up. People want it open. They want it open now. They don't really want to wait on this.
Excuse me, gentlemen. Excuse me, sir. We're not able to hear Mr. Lowry. Thank you.
They don't really want to wait on it to get around to the city, because you've got many priorities that take priority over this. And so I think with just a little bit of work, we could get that place back open. As we said, we don't need a bathroom if we can use the bathrooms at the clubhouse. You know, there's been a structure on that dock since 1902 continuously. It's changed numerous times, but it'd be a shame. It's probably the most symbolic thing of Pascagoula. That was the whole gateway to the island. If it wasn't there, 8th Avenue wouldn't be there, the city wouldn't be there, all that stuff. It's already got, I wrote an email last week. I hope you all had a chance to read it. It goes in much more detail, but the dock already has water. The dock already has electric. We're just talking about putting it in the building, which is actually 2 feet higher than the dock. The piling was all redone 3 years ago. It's all in good shape. So it's just a matter of getting somebody down there and actually saying, what's it going to cost? And I'm happy to be involved. I've already had some people involved with it. So I think we need to get it reappraised. We need to get the actual estimates for what's going to cost for the electric and the repairs. My estimate, again, I'm no professional, would be $10,000 or $20,000, and we already have it appraised at $65,000. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to have air conditioning. The roof, the interior, inside the ceiling's in beautiful shape. I mean, they put a lot of money into it a number of years ago to get it straightened out. So that's that. On the clubhouse, I think, and if you look at the pictures, you can see how there's those like green beams that got exposed after it got knocked down. Clearly that was open air at one point, okay? FEMA doesn't apply because it's historically designated. So we can get a FEMA variance without much issue and not even worry about the 50% rule as far as that goes. So we need to redo the bathroom, maybe have an area for an office or something, then otherwise it could be open air. Less is more historically, okay? It would look more historic if it was back to being open air, really. So not only is it cheaper, it's quicker to do. And then just one last thing, the ballpark and the short arms, I wasn't one of that people. None of my people, I think, are. This would be a whole different situation. If the community needs to get involved, they will. I've talked to dozens of people that are willing to put money up. And so I would just like to have a better dialogue. I have a good dialogue now with Cam, but continue on this way and try to get, it sounds like somebody said by the end of May we have to do something. So that's something we should be doing quickly. Thank you very much.
Thank you. City
Bonnie
Manager,
Gustafson?
one second. City Manager, if you don't mind. I think, are we running up against, so I think the issue is we're running up against, these are city-owned properties, correct? Okay.
Correct.
So because they are city-owned properties, we have to go through the standard bidding process that a government entity, we can't just pick a contractor because they'll do it for 10 grand or whatever. We have to put it out for public bid. Now, is there a way for us, just help me think through this here, right? Rather than doing that, is there a way to do it like the way an owner would do it, where they pull their own permits and instead we would have volunteer workers doing some of the work? Again, if what the gentleman suggested, is that an option for us? How could we work around this? Is there a way to work around this?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
I would want to get back to you, and we have time to do that. I do know that the city does follow our own permitting process when we do,
of course,
city construction projects. So I need to check whether we could defer that permit process to someone other than the city.
Well, I'm not saying that we would defer to somebody else's, but rather than having a contract to do the work, if some of our residents want to do the work the same way that I, as a homeowner, decided I wanted to do the work myself.
You'd have to have a volunteer architect and a volunteer local builder, but that's possible.
Okay. So I'm hoping you understand where I'm going with this, right? So normally, because the city is a government entity, there are specific rules that we have to follow by Florida statute that say, okay, if you have a project that you're working on, whether it's a shuffleboard court, whether it's a building, whether it's a new roof, new AC, whatever it is, you have to put it out for bid in a public notice. You know, there's a whole process. And what happens oftentimes is we may only get one bid, right? Or sometimes we only get 2 bids. And while you and I may know that, okay, I think I could do this as a homeowner for, as Bill said, $3,000 for the flooring, right? A contractor may not do that for that amount, or nobody will even bid it for, we may only have 1 bid for $200,000. So I'm trying to think of, in terms of how can we work with that, so that if the residents of the community wanted to contribute and volunteer or in some way help us, so that we can work through this process, that we don't have to spend $200,000 or, $86,000 on the other building. So if we get, just add that to the list of things that we can. Yes? Next comment?
Bonnie Gustafson.
Great. If you please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Bonnie Gustafson. I live at 685 Bahia, Del Mar Circle, over on Isla del Sol. And a lot of things have been addressed that you have brought up that I were like, I'm going to say this and this, and they have. But I also wanted to speak as a former physical education teacher about the availability of a facility for people with disabilities, people with handicaps, the incredible amount of people as we play through the whole season who come down there to ask questions, to take pictures, to speak to us and say, how do we do this, how do we do this? And it's so community invested. People in the neighborhood that I'm walking by, and we bring up, engage about this, and everybody's so happy to see that we're here trying to advocate of the significance. Whether the building has 4 walls, we had people that were generous enough to provide their pickup trucks for the last 5 months to store stuff. We're down there, we're cleaning. My husband went down there, and because we do a collection of funds to keep it maintained, we invest in blowers, we invest in, my husband got a product that will keep the courts, because of all the sand that destroyed on the courts, a wax that is giving us great surface use. And it's just so important to know how we are all invested, and I know the community is the same, and having it for every age group. They're not going to go out and play pickleball. They're not going to go on the basketball court. We as a group really support the community and the restaurants around, but also for the community to say, I can do this, whether my hips don't work right, I can have those benches to sit and enjoy. It's just super important that people are just fascinated by it, or they played it on a cruise ship, and they would love to see it stay here. So you have addressed the can we or not, so thank you.
Thank you.
Diane Halverson.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Diane Halverson, 8615 East Bay Drive, Treasure Island. My husband and family and I have been residents of the area off and on since the early 80s. And we have come to know and love the joys of shuffleboard, both playing with family members and with the club for the last 15 years since we've been more than vacationers here. And we are impressed with the opportunities that it has given us for socialization, for recreation, be it, my cardiologist says it's not really exercise, but it's as good as I'm going to get, so that's the way it goes for me. But we are also impressed with the numbers. We play seasonally with the club, but we come down starting in late September, early October, and through at least June when it gets really too hot to play. We play several times a week. We are always impressed with the number of people who come as casual visitors and use the equipment that we have provided as a club to and maintain, who have never played before, but we have seen 5 times a week playing in the after the season hours, because they too have come to know and love it. We have children of all ages playing, and adults and families and people who come immediately after our 12 o'clock day ends because they know the courts are beaded and in better condition after we've left than at other times. We are impressed with the number of people who stop and ask questions and want to know how to play and when they can play, and it's just become our reason for existence 5 days a week for within the season and throughout. We have made many friendships and have really enjoyed the opportunities that having the Shuffleboard Club has offered, both to us personally and to the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Deb Scheckner.
If you please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. Deborah Scheckner, Bocasia Isle Drive in St. Pete Beach. There is history here with the Shuffleboard Courts, and I don't know how long many of you have been here, but I know Lisa has been here a very long time. And the building was named after a man, Augie, and I'm embarrassed, I don't remember his last name. He was a great citizen of St. Pete Beach. He helped form the building, and you have to understand that building holds shuffleboard. I don't know the name. Sticks, cues. Thank you. For everybody to use. So you just open that little door, and whether you have the cues or not, you're able to play. And I feel like it's honoring him again, and he was an amazing citizen and did so much for our city, to repair it and hopefully have an area where you can still store things. And then, you know, somebody mentioned to me before, if there's a storm or lightning, that shelter provided an area for people to sit. And there are leagues who play here. The only other shuffleboard that's I know of is in downtown St. Pete, which is also very historic. But just because a building's not 50 years old doesn't mean that it has history and means a lot to people who not only live here but play here. And I hope we can do something to bring it back to where it was. Thank you.
Thank you.
John Rude.
If you please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is John Rude. I'm at 4535 40th Street in St. Petersburg. This facility has been a great asset to the community. I'm hearing more about it, the history of it, than even I ever knew. One of the other things that we do, in addition to our leagues, is the Women's Club also comes over there and uses our facility as well. So there's a lot of people that you see that you might not go by there and see, you know, 24/7 crowds there. But a lot of people are using it. I would implore you all to keep the character and charm of Passat Grill intact and try to get that building restored or at least put back in use. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Alan Staub. Staub.
If you'll please state your name and address for the record.
Alan Staub, 103 7th Avenue. I'm probably the most directly affected because I live right at the end of the pier and I play in the shuffleboard courts. So I have been a owner down here for over 50 years. First time I came down here was 1948, and I was impressed then as a kid. And I'm impressed now at the things that we can do to keep part of Passat Grill. As you come approach Passat Grill, there's a sign that says Historic Passat Grill. It's getting less historic. And to take that building down that's in the court and make it a pavilion is just terrible. You lose the total character of the building. You lose the ability to have meetings inside the building that we do. You lose the ability to store all our equipment that we have. We have things like polished discs. There's quite a bit of equipment, and there were lockers inside that we put it in. It's just, I want Passat Grill to be Passat Grill. I don't want things torn down just because it's okay. A pavilion, it just doesn't work. You gotta have a building there, and that building is always over 100 years, or is over 100 years old. Also, I encourage people to put other things in that park that are usable, like bocce court. There used to be a horseshoe. There used to be horseshoes down there. I remember those. And it just that area should be used. Should have a lot of things in it that you can use. You can't put paddleball and tennis and all that stuff, but there are other things that you can put in there. You can put in some more places to have grilling and things like that. Passive things that don't cost a lot. I implore you to rebuild that building the way it was. It's part of when you drive down to Pass the Grill, it's the thing you pass and you see it right there. An open pavilion, you have to try to keep Pass the Grill a little historic. And I also vote for rebuilding the pier, although I'm not nearly as excited about that as I am. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Claudine Reese.
If you'll please state your name and address for the record.
Claudine Reese, 3120 East Vina Del Mar Boulevard. And I just wanted to comment, I know that nobody's saying we might get rid of the shuffleboard court, but it's a multi-generational something that's been happening just for so many years. Kids come out with their grandparents. It's so important not only to have it, but I think part of the appeal, and I would say this also is true of all of St. Pete Beach, and I'm worried about that with all of the demolition and all of the new construction, that we, especially, I know Pass the Grill, historical Pass the Grill, we need to keep it looking historical. So if it needs some modifications because of, whatever, understandable, but we need to focus on the charm, and I would say that's true not only of Pass the Grill, just to keep that ambience, and it has everything to do with the tourists as well. Like if we think it's beautiful and it's the ambiance we like, it's also good for the tourists. So I just wanted to really focus on keeping the character. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that's it on that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, commissioners, comments, suggestions, thoughts?
I've got a couple.
Sure.
So I think that, for a very long time, the citizens of St. Pete Beach have had a lot to say about maintaining the character of St. Pete Beach. And I think it's absolutely accurate that these two buildings are prime examples of what that is. Sometimes it can be hard to define what is the character of St. Pete Beach, but I think if you put up a picture of Mary Pier and the shuffleboard court, that's it. Like, that's absolutely what the character is. And so I'd like to see us do everything we can to keep those buildings as close to what they are as is possible. And I wonder if there is some way to the mayor's point about, creative ways of doing the repairs. Is there, if there's some way, if the Shuffleboard Club or some other folks wanted to, form a group that's Friends of Mary Pier or Friends of the Shuffleboard Court, that is it possible in that situation for the city to pass off the management of a repair project to that group? Is there a way to give them control of the property in that fashion where it's not necessarily the same, problem we might have where we put out a request for proposals and get one bid that it turns out is not very competitive, even though it's supposed to be a competitive bidding process, or if there's something creative we can do to help make that happen. I'd like to see both of them kept as well. I think they definitely add to the character. The concern, again, is going to boil down to money. So I'd like to see what we can do and everything that we could do to get those numbers lowered. I agree if we need to get creative on it, then get creative on it, a GoFundMe, whatever we need to do to try to keep them. I think the pricing of ones that, I don't mean to chuckle on that, but that was really high. I mean, I just got a quote from my house for UF wiring and half of it, which is the underwater wiring, and I have to do a full rewire on my house. I got high quotes of $32,000 and got a nice quote for $16,500. So I'll take the $16,500. Thank you very much. So there are other quotes out there. I think it behooves us to try to shop that as creatively as we can to get outside of normal means if we have to. And I don't know legally what we can do. So I will default to the city manager for that. But I would suggest, like Commissioner Marriott said, if you can form some groups, friends of, try to start doing that. If there anybody interested in going and doing a GoFundMe, start that process. Start doing that to try to get some interest, some funding. You might even, as a GoFundMe, get outside of this area and get St. Petersburg or other shuffleboard organizations. You know, it's like in this town with the water rising, every inch counts, every dollar counts that you can get. So if we can do this as a group project, maybe we can get it done. It would be nice to keep them both.
Get a Nike sponsorship.
There you go. Hey, you could, I don't know, can we sell names on it,
Right.
Just, they do it for venues all the time. Maybe that's a possibility. Again, it's good to think outside the box. Maybe something that would work.
Thank you, Commissioner. City Manager, do you have enough direction to work with for the time being?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, we move on to the agenda. Are there any proposed amendments to the agenda?
Mayor.
Yes.
Yeah, but
Commissioner Rosnicki?
I needed to excuse myself from tonight's meeting early. I'm already leaving later than what I intentionally wanted to do, unfortunately, because I have a family commitment, and I was supposed to leave at 6:45, so I'm already late, so I apologize for that.
I didn't hear a thing you said.
She has to leave early. Commissioner Robinson?
Yes, I have an item for discussion. And that would be upping the community meetings for development projects from 1 to 3.
Okay.
And then also I have a comment on consent item J.
Any other changes? I would like to add a discussion item for the comprehensive plan review process.
Isn't working.
Is my mic not working?
No, it is.
Okay. I'd like to add a discussion item for the comprehensive plan review process. And since the planners who are working on that project are here tonight, I would request that we move that to right after general audience comments, just that one discussion item. Okay. Are there any other amendments to the agenda? Okay, is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
I move we approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Great. City Clerk, if you please do a roll call.
Commissioner Robinson?
Yes.
Commissioner Mulholland?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Marriott?
Yes.
Mayor Petrilla?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Do we have any general audience comments?
We do. Deborah Schechner?
I don't know if I should hold this comment until after you have the presentation. Okay.
By all means.
So, good evening. I was very disappointed in the presentation at the workshop last week. There were many people there who do not come to commission meetings because time is very difficult and many of them have to leave work. The lack, in my opinion, the lack of knowledge and preparedness of the presenter, reading from a script, they seemed a bit rushed, disorganized. I don't think the presentation adhered to the directive, ignored residents' vast majority concerns that wanted our sewer system, infrastructure, and resiliency in place before any hotel development. There was a feeling that their program orientation was a push for large-scale development only. Again, residents were being heard, not being heard, but they were being handled. And I've been to probably 20 or 30 of these in the last how many years? It's always the same. The most egregious offense was when there was a section of blocks that was, in my opinion, a little juvenile. The lead presenter, talking about the hotel size, made two statements. Development will be happening. Then he started talking about 20-story buildings, which said to me he did not look at the history of St. Pete Beach. We will not ever accept 20-story buildings, and I can tell you that was the biggest fight that we've had. Our input was just background noise to them. Marginalizing residents does not install trust in this process. His other statement regarding the 20 stories, because we'll have more water views, he subtly pushed it as he was at his station. He doesn't understand who we are, and I almost felt as though, were we the bumpkins, that they can push anything over on us? And I will tell you, the people that I know that were present felt the same way as I did, and people were very aggravated with the way the questions were formed. He wanted a certain answer. He was pushing us to those certain answers, ignoring what the residents talked about and ignoring what was important to the city of St. Pete Beach. You know, how many times are we going to see the same thing? Put little stickers on the same thing. They're not presenting us or working with us as residents. You have to hear the residents. Can't marginalize us. And that's how I, and I will say many other people, those who can't come here because they work late, felt. And I spoke to a lot of people. So I was very, very disappointed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dana Richardson.
If you please state your name and address for the record.
Dana Richardson, 5830 Bahama Way South. So, Deborah, he did a great job. I won't be able to do as good, but I've gone to the first two meetings, and I am very frustrated. I walked in, I talked to Kristen, one of our planners, and I'm like, why aren't these meetings being put on Zoom? I'm displaced. My whole street is displaced. We're not getting the community input that's needed, and this is a really big issue. The comp plan was from 2001. It's like 24 years old, and we need to make changes to it, but we're not getting the time for residents to input what is important to them. I was very disgruntled with the meeting. It seems like CGA Solutions is working for the hotels and developments. That's how I felt. It's our money, it's a taxpayer. We're paying for this workshop, this to be done, and why are we, the residents, not being heard? We are being steered to give our one or two issues, and that's it, when it's like all of the above and more that we have issues with. And I don't understand it. So we really do need to work hard to get a Zoom done for all the rest of the meetings where we can get participation. I think that's very important. Our comp plan in the very beginning, I've been up here before saying this, it talks about community and how the residents, that the city is essentially a built-out community. There is a strong community objection to high-density, unmanaged overdevelopment of our coastal Gulf community. that will further degrade infrastructure and public services. There is a strong desire to protect the quiet character of existing residential neighborhoods from encroachment and overdevelopment of non-residential uses. This was from December 2001 to May 2007, and it says amended in 2012. Residents have consistently been against overdevelopment, and we are consistently not being heard. During our non-elected commission, where we did not have residents representation, we got 2 CUP applications approved that totally take away our views, our beach access, and it totally is destroying this town. And we really need to make changes before we continue to do that. We need to keep the character of St. Pete Beach, and we need to come up with a plan for a cohesive look. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I think that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Somebody put one on top just a second ago. On your pile right there.
Claudine Reese? Yeah.
Okay.
I snuck it in there.
If you'll please state your name and address for the record.
Claudine Reese, 3120 East Vina Del Mar Boulevard. And I'm just going to beat the same drum I always do, and that is I had the exact same experience. I only was able to go to the first workshop, but I will say that I felt like it was not reflective. I felt like no research had been done at all. I was told by somebody that went to the workshops 20 years ago that they had some of the same designs as they had in the 20 years ago, and she even had a flyer from it. So I expect, I think, a little bit more. Nothing was FEMA compliant. I mean, we can do better, and I hope that we'll press the people who were paying a lot of money to do these projects to do a better job than that, because again, the character thing, we're special because we're St. Pete Beach. Not that everything has to look the same, not that we have to have cookie cutter and, you know, everybody, private property is private property, but we should be striving for more to make this an experience that makes us different and special from all of our surrounding communities. But don't just build to build to improve the character and improve living here and improve the experience for the tourists, make ourselves something special, or and preserve or something special. We have a lot of things that need to be redone, but if we're going to do it, this is the chance to make ourselves what we want to be, not just to rebuild something. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that's it.
Okay. So next we move on to discussion items. So the first discussion item is going to be on the current process of the comprehensive plan review. And what I want to do really quickly is just so that everybody understands kind of where we are and how we got here today. Just give you a brief history of the last couple of years and the process that brought us here. The last time our comprehensive plan was reviewed was in 2014, and that really was done without resident input, but rather because of a lawsuit. All right, so a lot of the comprehensive plan in the current condition is because of that. So as a non-elected official resident of St. Pete Beach, I'm looking around and saying, what's happening here? Why, when I moved here, we had a moratorium. All of a sudden, moratorium's gone, and next thing I know, there's all of this proposed overdevelopment. And so I ran. I won, if I may say so, in a landslide. And one of the campaign promises I made, which I brought to the commission on the very first day in my office, was that we should have a comprehensive plan review for the purpose of giving the residents of St. Pete Beach, geez. I mean, I know I'm long-winded, but I'm Adrian Petrilla. And so on the very first day, I brought it up. It was met with some reluctance, but after about 6 months of prodding and cajoling, we got to the point where we put out a request for bringing on a firm to help us review the comprehensive plan so that so we have a plan that represents what the community wants, a plan that has specifically a high level of community involvement. We had two firms at the time, the firm that we selected and a different firm. And at that time, I and the other commissioners presented several questions. We interviewed both of them here in chambers, and actually in several of the commission meetings. And one of the things that I brought up at the time is, what if at the end of the day, the community decides that they want less density, less intensity, less height. If the community decides that, as the comprehensive plan states in the first paragraph, that we are essentially a built-out community and that we cannot handle any more beyond what we currently have. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't have new. It just means, what if we're just full, right? It's like you can replace this water with something else, but there's only so much you can fit in here, right? What if that's what the community decides? And at that time, the city attorney provided some suggestions as how that could be done within the framework of the Florida statutes, our comprehensive plan and charter. And that was a question that was posed to the two applicants, the two proposals. And at the time, the firm that we currently selected, Calvin Giordano, they said, listen, this is something that we do all the time. And they had a long list of other coastal cities that they work with in the state of Florida. And they said, in fact, we also have, when you hire us, we also have this great partner over here, this law firm, that this is what they do, right? They help us navigate, make sure that we write revisions to the comprehensive plan, that can withstand scrutiny. And so based on, those statements, based on those presentations, we selected this particular firm. Now, I will tell you, in my experience so far with them, I've had nothing but pleasant interactions. I've not had any reasons to be dissatisfied with their performance until last week. So I attended the community meeting, just like many of our residents did. In fact, we had almost a full room at the community center. And I started having alarm bells going off in my head within the first 5 to 10 minutes. The conversation was not about whether development, but when development, right? So, hey, here's what's going to do if you want to squeeze more density in here. You can do these types of apartments, and you can do these types of transient lodgings. And so I'm like, well, hold on a second. We never said that we wanted more. In fact, we haven't said anything yet. The whole purpose of this was to hear from the community and say, well, what does the community actually want? What do our residents want? Are they happy with the current status, right? Is this fine? Or do they feel like we're here, right? Or are they willing to blow this up like a balloon and squeeze more in here? I don't know. I think I have a sense of what the community wants based on my election, based on subsequent elections. I think the community has given us a very strong and definitive mandate as to the direction they want to see the commission take. But again, this was the purpose of this was to get community involvement. So even though this was a town hall, I had raised my hand and I said, hey, when are we talking about whether the current level is enough, too much, or too little of development, of density, intensity, traffic, everything? So don't worry, it's coming. A few slides down, just a couple more in the presentation. Well, a few slides more came, and I didn't see it. And I raised my hand again, and it's like, okay, actually, it's over there at one of the tables where the workstations are. I said, great, we'll wait for it. I get to the workstations, and it's like, hey, what I have here is the selection of, do I want A, do I want B, do I want C? And both of them were the same density, just the various heights. And so I asked, I said, okay, where is the option? What if people want to select option D, which is less? What if the community says, we don't want any more, what we currently have is too much, we actually want less intensity, less density, less strain over infrastructure, less height, less everything of that. So at that point, I received an answer. I wasn't particularly pleased with the answer, and I did remind them about the conversations that we had at the commission meeting. where I presented the what-if scenario. What if the community decides that they actually want less? And I think the first or second slide at the community meeting actually had that same law firm that was given to us as a here's the law firm that can help write or rewrite the comprehensive plan based on what the community wants, if the community wants less. So my challenge with the current approach is, one, it does not ask the community what the community wants. We do have at least one, maybe two Zoom meetings built into the thing. That was a discussion that we had just a few months ago, because people are displaced and out of town, and may be so in some cases for a year or two if they're rebuilding or tearing down. So that is coming. That was built into that. So that was my first. So that's what I want to bring to the commission, discuss is, the current structure, the current questions that are asked, and which is really funny because out in the lobby there was a community-wide survey thing, which actually had far more in-depth questions. We want to hear from everyone. Do you feel development happening here reflects how the community focused? There's a, if you dream up the perfect future for the district, what would it look like? Things like that, where it says, do you feel development reflects the purpose of creating? Do you feel the development here happening reflects the community? If you were to dream up the perfect, future for your district and development, what would that look like? So it was far more in-depth than what we received at the community meeting. And again, I think the very first big shortfall of the current structure is it does not ask the community exhaustively what it wants, but rather it provides a specific set of questions that may be steering in a specific direction. And then my second challenge that I have with the current process is that we were very clear when we were going through the request for proposal, when we interviewed the different firms, very clear as to what the mission was, what the scope was, and that there was a potential that the community would come back, if we were to ask them, that they would say, we want less density, and that we would need help on how to navigate that. That was a very, very clear directive. That was a very clear possibility in reality on day one. To me, this then brings us to the point of, we're spending a lot of money here, a little over $150,000. And I would like to address this very early on in the process, now that we're, 2 meetings in. I don't want to wait till the end, because I don't think what the commission or what the community envisioned was for us to redesign, have a study in aesthetics and design of the large resort district and Corey Avenue and everything else, and what size sidewalks we want and so on. I think what the community really wanted to address, and the reason the commission brought it up, was we want to address our infrastructure. Can we handle more density? Can we even handle the current density as it is? And then what steps does the community want us to take? And so if the firm doesn't feel like they can actually help us in that, then I think we need to look at whether we want to continue with this process. If they don't feel that they can help us, then they need to say so now and say, look, we'll have to bow out because we actually can't get the job done. If they tell us, look, I think maybe we misunderstood, maybe we need to go back to the drawing board, come back with a new plan that we can bring before the commission and say, okay, here's how we're going to go forward. Again, these are my thoughts. One of the gentlemen is here from the firm. I wanted to give them an opportunity to present, their side to, again, I'm trying to see if there's a way for us to continue working together. That would be my desire, to figure out, Let's make this work and give the community what the community is asking for, because the last thing we want to do is spend $150,000 and get something nobody asked for. So, please.
Thank you, Mayor and Commission. Louis Cerna with Calvin Giordano and Associates, and I sincerely appreciate your comments, again, early in the process, and hopefully we can clarify this. And I'm glad that you brought up the survey. The survey does go quite a bit more in depth than we are able to in the workshops, and they are more open-ended. And we do want to get the community's complete input on what their vision is. And that being said, I think we had some very good positive feedbacks and some positive comments on the vision for the future, and a lot of important issues were brought up that we intend to explore further. As to the concern at the workshop, can we offer an option to say no growth? And yes, I mean, that is a possibility. Now, I do want to make it clear, we work closely with the city staff on the questions beforehand. And I think everybody, staff and ourselves included, we said we want to be realistic to the public that Florida has very strict property rights laws. And to say we're going to reduce density and intensity, there's very real implications with that legally. And we can report that, and I'll commit to that. But whether or not there's a solution to that, I have to be realistic, and I can't promise that if the city says they want to reduce density by half or whatever, that there's a legal way to do that. That's that's in the realm of what the lawyers do, and even then, I don't know if they could come up with a solution. But what I can commit to you is that we will work closely with staff and our attorney and the city's attorney to see if, we can resolve that issue. And again, we're willing to ask the question, but we don't want to give the public the impression that if indeed everyone says they want to reduce density, that the city will, that we can find a way to do that legally. That I couldn't commit to, but we would be glad to ask the question and report back. I hope that helps.
I have a question. In regards to pool density is an ask. It does not fall under Burt Harris, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that would be a way to reduce density. Instead of getting all these developers getting a density for nothing off the backs of the residents. I mean, that is a way, that is one way. I understand the other way, we can't mess with their vested rights, or we can't mess with that. That would fall under Burt Harris. But in no way does the pool density fall underneath that.
Correct, and there are other things that you can do.
Unless it's already been approved, and we're trying to take that away, and it's not legal to do that. If it's legal to do that, then that's a different aspect.
And that's an important clarification, and we can definitely make that statement definitively at the meetings, and we can work with that. There's things like transfers of density that you can do.
Or even reduce the amount of pool density that we have. But we don't even have a study, or we don't have any indication from anybody, when are we full?
Yes.
Like you said. So I guess we're looking to that point too. When are we full, and what can we do to reduce that, so we are not overcrowded, congested, burdened with traffic. And still, the residents are the ones that pay 80% of the tax base here. It's not the hotels. Mm-hmm. It's not the tourists. So, I mean, some of that needs to be very clear, and I think all the residents are very aware of what they pay for here.
Yeah, and I appreciate that input, and we'll work to improve on things like that we can work with, sure.
Commissioner?
I want to make sure I get it right there.
Sure.
So, the Florida legislature is considering changing the rules on what cities can do as it relates to the comprehensive plan. Are you aware of that, sir? I assume you are.
I am, yeah. It's an important point. We're watching that closely, sure.
Right, and right now it appears likely that they will restrict municipalities from being able to redo their comprehensive plan until FY '28, maybe, something like that, Mr. City Attorney?
It's House Bill 1535, and no local government under this bill, if it passes, may propose or amend its comprehensive plan or land development regulations to enact more burdensome or restrictive provisions. And they also may not adopt a moratorium, which would put a temporary halt on growth or density and intensity.
And if passed, that is true through when?
July 1st, 2027. This contract goes through January of 2027. We'll know by the end of session, which is May 2nd, whether that passes or not. So on May 3rd, we'll know.
Right, so the next meeting we'll know. So then
It's on May 13th.
Okay.
So that would be 7 days later or so.
Right. So I guess the question is, do we need to allow that to come to fruition before we decide anything on any of this? Or if we wanted to continue to go forward with some new guidance for the folks that are working on the comprehensive plan for us, is there a benefit to doing it, recognizing there's a very real possibility that we wouldn't be able to enact anything, or this commission wouldn't be able to enact anything until late 2027, 2028. Do we want to have that in our back pocket? Do we want to fish and cut bait? And if we decide to fish and cut bait, what do we owe you, sir? If we terminate your agreement tonight, what do we owe you?
We'd have to see where we are in the process. You know, to your question, we could move forward and ask the question, but you know, with the caveat that there are certain things that the city may not be able to do because of the legislature. But you know, we could at least report the findings, and I'm not going to make any assumptions, but the finding that perhaps the city wants to reduce, the residents want to reduce density, for example, to X number. So, you know, reporting and public input, that could continue, but, you know, the action you take on that, you know, there's a possibility that cannot happen.
Yeah, it would have to be tabled until, let's just say, January 2028 or thereabouts, assuming this legislation were to pass.
Yeah, and the other point is, I think there's a lot of things that came up at the meetings that that the city could address without reducing density and restricting development, like setbacks, preserving views, preserving beach access,
facades,
architectural guidelines, infrastructure. A lot can be done with infrastructure improvements. So there's a lot that can come out of this. You know, that beyond what the legislature, I think, is limiting the cities to.
Okay. So I just wanted to, you know, put that out there that, you know, I mean, that needs to be part of the consideration as well.
I think to answer your question earlier about what do we owe you, the contract I reviewed, it says the city wishes to if the city wishes to terminate the agreement at any time for any reason, we give 30 days prior written notice to the contractor, and that the contractor would then be paid for all work performed up to the date of termination. and that the contractor would provide all completed original or draft work to date, including but not limited to the research records, surveys, data reports, maps, technical notes, and other relevant documents.
So
So you have to give 30 days notice to terminate for any reason. That would be like what I would call like without cause.
Right.
That they would be owed the money for the 30 days, and it looks like the legislature will decide on May 2nd.
So napkin math, sir, that's probably, I do a lot of napkin math. It's not really popular around here, but I like to do it. It's always worked well for me. So napkin math, we'd probably be about 50% into our contract with you. And I'm not asking for a firm commitment. I'm just asking for a ballpark. Would you agree with that?
My napkin math would be like 40%, but
Okay.
that's I could be wrong.
Okay. Well, I started to say 40%, but then when we figured that we were going to need another week or two, that it might bump up to 50%. So, but it sounds like you believe, based on the restrictions that are likely to come down on us, that you can still deliver benefits to the community as it relates specifically to infrastructure, as well as some other things as it relates to appearance type modifications and those type things. Setback.
Oh, absolutely. I think we've got a lot of good information. We're still processing it, but we did get a lot of good input, and we're picking up on themes. A big part of this project is public engagement. That can continue. Again, it's the action that you take on that could probably halt, but we think it's very useful to continue the public engagement, and I think we received a lot of good feedback, and apologies to the people who spoke today if they felt like we weren't completely organized or didn't reflect what they were saying, but we can again work closely with staff and address those concerns. So yeah, we feel it's a very important project, and I think we've got some valuable information that we can build on. So
I just, so I've been to both meetings. I had to leave the last meeting prematurely. My feeling is generally ambivalent about what I've heard, but I will tell you that both residents and officials, you guys aren't real popular right now. So I guess if the contract were to continue, I would certainly ask you to, focus on the things that you can deliver for the community, because I think by and large, as I say, there's not a tremendous level of satisfaction in what's been delivered so far.
And we absolutely want to provide the city the best product possible. So that's why I'm glad we're having this meeting now. We can course correct, and we do that anyway. But hearing these specific comments, we can definitely work with the city on doing that. So yeah, we want to. We're here to listen. We're at the meetings to listen. So we're not taking a position either way. So I think we'll get that from both sides, that we're pro-growth or we're anti-growth. But we do want to listen, and we are committed to working with you on making those adjustments.
And just to be clear, some of the feedback that I've received is maybe from the not far right anti-growth crowd, but more the centrist crowd. So I think I think it's important to share that with you, that it's just not whoever these extremists might be considered to be. It's not, the feedback I've received not just from extremists. It's more centrist. So I would share that with you, and you seem to indicate that you want to do a course correction and given the opportunity to do so, I hope you will do that, and I assume you will. So I just wanted to ask those questions, and thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've got a couple thoughts. I think I wasn't able to attend the first meeting. I was at the second meeting, and I was generally disappointed to see that the crowd of folks who were there both was nowhere near as large as I would have hoped that it would be, and people walked out of the meeting generally more disgruntled than they walked in, which I don't think should ever be the point of a community meeting like that. And so I think that I think to me, I feel like that perhaps there's not a lot of real clear information about what the goal of the meetings are, and I know that I've heard from a number of people who haven't been able to attend either of the meetings so far, who have said things like, well, I wasn't able to go to either of the ones that happened already, so there's probably no, like as though it's a sequence of meetings that you have to attend them all for it to do any good. And so I think we need to get the information out there a lot better about the meetings, let people know what's happening at the meetings, let them know that you know, you can go to one meeting, you can go to all the meetings, that there's lots of opportunities to give input, and maybe even delineate between, or if there is such a delineation between, you know, what meetings are duplicates in some respect of meetings, so that you don't have, you know, the same, you know, I think at that last community meeting, I think if you took out city staff and elected officials, there was about, I don't know, 25 people there. And so if you have those same 25 people showing up over and over expecting something different to happen, when your goal is that it's the same thing is going to happen, and it's just another opportunity for more people to show up, that can, you know, that would certainly cause people to think that nothing productive is happening. And then I guess a couple of questions, and that would, one of them would be that, you know, I believe the mayor and Commissioner Robinson spoke a little bit to, you know, part of the goal of this comprehensive plan review was to you know, to say what can't, you know, how much development can we handle, and is it part of your, do you think it, or would you consider it part of your scope, or as part of the things that you all are planning on delivering at the end of the day, to be any hard data about traffic or infrastructure capacity, or is that not part of what you're doing, and that we should be expecting that separately from city staff?
Yeah, I think we're going to work with city staff on providing a lot of that. We do need to get the facts out there that, you know, there's limited infrastructure. Traffic will always be an issue, no matter, even if no more development takes place. So yeah, we're definitely working on the hard data part as well.
And then another, you know, there was a couple of other things that occurred to me when I was sitting in that meeting last week, and that was that, you know, when we talk about infrastructure, one of the things we talk about is can the current infrastructure we have handle development? And another thing that we talk about, or that we have talked about when some developers have come to us with projects, is that then, you know, with new development comes things like them handling all the stormwater on their own property, which takes some of the impact off of the city's stormwater system. And so I think we need to get a real clear picture of at what point is development a burden on infrastructure, and at what levels of development are benefits to our infrastructure. Because I think it can be, you know, like not in every case, but I think there are cases where if you have a property where all of the runoff was going into the city stormwater system before, and now they're handling it on their own property, you know, I think those things need to be taken into consideration. And then another thought that I had while I was sitting there was that, you know, I would imagine that there are things in our code, whether by design or by accident, that make development cost a certain amount, right? There are things that can be written into the code, whether it's landscaping or green building standards or any variety of things that make development more expensive. And so, you know, to a developer, it's a math problem, right? How much density do I need to pay for the development and make a profit? And so I would love to see a part of the comprehensive plan review be, are there parts of our code that would make, that would incentivize a developer to develop at lower density because the payoff would come with less rooms? You know, where we're not taking density away from someone, where we're running amok of the Burt-Harris Act, but we're finding a way without giving up. You know, we're not trying to open plastic factories, but you know, to do so. Are there places in our code where we perhaps have unintentionally made development so expensive that a developer feels like the max density is their only option? And so it seems to me like a review of our comp plan should include some of those economics where we would find a way to incentivize the reduced density that people want.
Thank you. Yeah, I've been taking notes.
Okay.
Good comments.
I had a question too, because it also seemed that the schedule came out a bit late as far as what the meeting schedules were going to be. And unfortunately, I schedule my schedule pretty far out in advance. And some of them I can't attend. Couldn't attend the first one. I'm not going to be able to attend this next one. And I feel like I can't catch up, that I can't provide input after the fact. And I also want to know, what input are you getting? It's supposed to be from shareholders or stakeholders in the community, being business owners and residents. Are we sure we're getting that? Are we getting other people as well?
Yeah, we did targeted notifications. Whether or not that's being successful, probably not. I mean, that's something we can look at. You know, I do want everyone to know that the survey is available, as always, and we'll always have that, even if you can't go to any of the meetings. So we do want people to avail themselves of that. But yeah, that's always a concern, who's going to show up and what the representation is, and we'll continue to do our best on that.
So I'm not a big fan of non-committal answers superseded only by receiving a different answer when asking the same question at the second time. And it seems to me that there's too many ifs here. And it seems to me that we're getting a different answer from what we got almost a year and a half ago when we started the process. And so I think what maybe is in order is a pause. We have some things in the legislature that come into fruition on May 2nd. Maybe we put this whole process on hold until we see what the legislature does. Now, just because it passes the House and the Senate doesn't mean the governor will sign it. There's always a possibility he vetoes it, so who knows. And then we need clear answer, right? So the conversations that we had in previous commission meetings, where I presented the very real possibility that if we asked residents what they wanted, that they might come back and say, we want less density, intensity, height, and et cetera. And at the time, just going off a recollection here, for example, the city attorney ran off a long list of ways on how that could be accomplished. Right? If your infrastructure, for example, is at capacity. If, for example, your infrastructure, whether it's roads, stormwater, sewers, and let's be honest here, 100% of whatever is being built, 100%, right? No matter what mitigations they may undertake, it runs into our sewer system. You may abate some stormwater, but all of that stuff. Goes into our sewer system, which is, by all accounts, beyond capacity at the moment. And we've got, you know, a good number of our residents not even living in their homes right now, and a lot of the hotels are not even open right now. And so, as I remembered at that time, the city attorney gave a long list of reasons and why a city may take such measures as to, for the public good and safety, reduce height, density, intensity. And so the question I have for the firm at this point is, if you don't feel comfortable, if that's what the community asks for, if you don't feel comfortable saying that you can deliver that, and if your attorneys say that they don't feel comfortable delivering that, then just tell us now. And I'm not asking you to provide an answer tonight. I'm saying you've got almost a month until the May 13th for the next commission meeting. See what the legislature does. You know, that may make this whole conversation either a moot point or a completely different conversation. And then we come back and see, okay, based on that information, based on your conversation with the attorneys, what do you feel comfortable committing to? And so my proposal to the commission would be, is that we pause this process exactly where it is today, as if we had given that 30 days notice. You know, that's if you agree to this as well, if the commission has consensus on this, I would say, let's pause this process right now where it is. Let's not spend any more money on it, with the exception of getting an answer to those two questions. What does the commission?
I'm good with that.
I would agree.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I'm clear on, so you're saying pause the whole process,
Pause the entire process. We need to
cancel the upcoming meetings or postpone them,
postpone them.
and then I see what the legislature says.
See what the legislature comes back.
Yep.
And then get a definitive answer from their attorney consulting firm that they're working with, that if the community came back and said, we want less density, intensity, and height, and if we had legitimate reasons, for example, failing infrastructure, you know, other health and safety concerns, you know, and the city decided at that point that the revision of the comprehensive plan were to include decreased density, intensity, and height. Now, again, there's also a distinction in the comprehensive plan between what is by right and what is by approval. That's the reason it's called a conditional use. It's an application. It's not a conditional use by right, right? So, are there ways to reduce that component, for example, so that what an applicant may request that is above and beyond what is by right, can that be reduced? So, that's what I would propose, that they come back and say, look, we feel comfortable doing this, or we do not feel comfortable doing this, and we're just going to bow out of this process because we cannot deliver you the product that you're asking for. That's my recommendation.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay. Okay, so we will reconvene this conversation for the first commission meeting in May 13th. And I'm sure we'll have a couple more conversations between now and then.
All right, thank you.
Happy to, you know, chat at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope I didn't, by my lack of eloquence, give you the impression I was giving you two different answers. It's just that, yeah, I'd like the attorney to address that issue about reducing density and intensity. So, as a planner, I don't want to give, I can't give you legal advice, and I don't want to give you misleading advice. So, definitely not an intent to mislead you.
Sure, and my position is I would prefer for this process to move forward with both of us and the city together, and for us to give the community exactly what they're asking for. The last thing I want is for us to end at the end of the process. They're not happy with you, they're not happy with me, and we're short 150 grand.
I understand now. I appreciate that.
I would much rather we continue this process, and I can give you a glowing endorsement the next time a mayor calls me and asks me, how was your process with Calvin Giordano? So,
No, I appreciate that.
sure. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I have a public comment on this item.
There's no need for it.
Never mind.
Okay. Next, we move on to consent items. Commissioner Robinson, you had a quick question or
Just-
comment?
Yeah, I just had a comment on the adoption of reduced building permit fees. Don't want you to think that I'm not for this.
Which item?
Because it was one of the items that I do support after the fact. In fact, that was something I brought up very, very early on in this process. But I just do want to say that giving a 50% or 100% to folks that didn't pull permits has felt like, from the comments I've gotten from residents, that felt like the ones that did play by the rules are getting penalized for the fact that they didn't get to be in their homes. They didn't. They played by the city's rules, why others folks didn't. And now those others that did not and were able to get in their homes, they're reaping basically right now the same benefits. I mean, they're not paying any 3 times penalty fees. They're not paying any permit fees other than the small percentage we pay to the state. And now they're going to get a 50% reduction, as well as the residents that are late in the process in getting their permit fees in and did wait and didn't do the work. I just want to make that clear. I am still for the reduction in that, but I did have to make that statement on behalf of some of the constituents that I have heard from.
Just help me understand are they saying that people that didn't pull permits?
Yeah, are getting the same benefit. I mean, the people that waited to pull permits, played by the city's rules, waited to this point or to the point, and now those people that didn't play by the rules, that didn't pull permits and, redid their homes or sold their homes in some cases, they are now being offered no penalty for the late after the fact permitting, the 3 times, which is normally a 3 times, and some of those that have already applied have gotten free, and now they're still getting 50%. It's just it's a even ordinance across the board for everybody, but there's people that actually play by the rules, and it gives them no incentive to pull permits, is what I've been told.
I think the important thing to remember is that the folks who are pulling permits after the fact are probably going to have some pretty significant pain with inspections and potentially having to undo and redo work.
Potentially.
And so, and I wouldn't say just potentially, I would say highly likely. And so I don't think anybody's getting away, quote unquote, getting away with anything. I think, in a
I'm not
very
saying that they're getting away. I'm just saying that they feel like they are the ones being penalized.
I think in a very high stress situation, everybody made the decisions to do what they thought was best at the time with the information they had, and particularly in the case of a pretty traumatic event.
Understood.
I mean, I get how some people could feel that way. I also don't think there's any reason to punish people for decisions they made immediately post-hurricane. So I get it, but I just wanted to remind people that the folks who are pulling after the fact permits are going to have some significant hurdles with inspections.
So I'll add 2 things to that. Is one, so first of all, you are right. If you put drywall up, it's not going to be fun.
Yeah.
Fact that we have a Come Clean amnesty program, we've always kind of operated that way, that if you came to us, we generally have been very accommodating with residents. But really, it's 2 things. One is we let people know, please submit your permits before today, right? even if it's incomplete, even if you don't have all the information, just get it in, right? So there was every opportunity, even if you haven't decided. I work with a homeowner today. They still don't know what they're doing, but they've submitted their package and they may be making a lot of revisions on it, who knows, right? But it's in. The second component is we stopped receiving FEMA reimbursements for this on April 11th, okay? So for the last 10 days, we do not get reimbursed for any permit fees that we've waived, which means those funds are coming out of reserve funds. And for the next 45 days that we're waiving until June 1st, those funds will also come out of the reserve funds. So for all of those individuals who have not filed for their permits yet, even though we said just get it in so that we can submit it for FEMA for reimbursement, now all of those permit fees that we're waiving, they're coming out of reserve funds, which 100% of the residents in St. Pete Beach contribute to. So now for those few individuals that haven't done as much as submitted a permit until now, the rest of the city, the rest of the residents will have to pay for their permit fee waivers. So Commissioner Robinson, for those individuals that haven't done that yet, just let them know that whatever fees we're waiving, whether it's $1,000 or $10,000, that's coming, that's being paid for by all of us, the residents. And again, I understand why some people, even after 6 months, don't know what they're doing. But they could have just submitted something, anything, and we could have gotten reimbursed by FEMA for it. But now, we don't even have that opportunity. So every permit fee that we waive from here on out is being paid for by everybody in the community. Now, that's okay. That's why we have reserve funds. That's why we have an emergency fund, so that we can deal with emergencies, right? But they're not, they may act, anyone that's submitting a permit after today may actually be getting something that nobody else got, which is their permit fees paid by all their neighbors, versus everybody else got their permit fees by FEMA reimbursement. So there's always more to it than just, you know, I'm only getting half of my permit fee paid for. Yes, it's being paid for by all of us now. And that's okay. Again, that's what the reserve funds are there for. That's what emergency funds for. But just for context, they need to understand why there was a limit to how long we could extend this. We couldn't extend it indefinitely. We do not have an indefinite pot of money that we can pull out of reserves and emergency funds. There's a limit to that. So, I don't know. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second?
City Clerk?
Vice Mayor Marriott,
Yes.
Commissioner Robinson,
Yes.
Commissioner Mulholland,
Yes.
Mayor Petrilla.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Consent agenda, unless it's pulled a specific item, there are really no comments on the. Have we ever had comments on consent agenda? No?
During the general public comments where you make those.
Yes. That item has been approved. Next, we have action item 5A. Accept the Hurricane Helene and Milton emergency expenditures.
Good evening, Mayor and Commission. Devin Schmidt, Finance Director. Can you all hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. I'm going to share my screen for a presentation. Great, fantastic. So this item before you this evening is for the acceptance of the emergency expenditures related to the hurricanes Helene and Milton. So just a little bit of background, and these items are included in your packet with additional details that explains the contracts, the amounts, and the expenditures to date. But the city manager is authorized to authorize emergency contracts for and during hurricanes. So for Helene, the contract total amount is $7.3 million, with about $6.2 million spent. And for Milton, the contracts totaled $2.7 million, with $761,000 spent. Again, the details, descriptions, and the amount are included in the packet. So the contracts are authorized in compliance with the charter in section 2-228. During a declared state of emergency, normal procurement procedures can be suspended. This allows for the emergency procurements of goods and services using the most efficient and effective methods to protect public health and safety. Following the declaration, the City Commission must be notified of procurements exceeding $25,000 after the fact. And so that is what is included in both of the reports for Helene and Milton. So this item, just a little bit of a timeline or a flow chart for you, but the city manager, by way of this action item, is reporting the contracts related to the emergency of Helene and Milton as required for purchases exceeding over $25,000. Part of the delay that occurred was due to staffing shortages within the finance department, so there was some delayed reporting. But following the conclusion of the emergency declaration, staff is asking the commission to accept the attached expenditures included in the packet for Helene and Milton. Just a high-level idea for the commission and the public to understand about what types of contracts were included. So debris collection, AC repairs, road repaving, street sweeping, plan reviews, sand removal throughout the city, street patching, pumps for the pump station, electrical and emergency services, contracted building officials and plans examiners, pump station support, replacement waste receptacles, debris monitoring, water clean out of elevators, a temporary fire station, and work done to pump station 1. So just a little bit about the funding for these contracts. So to date, the city has received $3.9 million related to Hurricane Helene relief for Category A expenses for debris removal. An emergency bridge loan will be discussed at an upcoming commission meeting, and I believe it has been before the commission prior. And we are continuously working with our partners at Deloitte and expect reimbursement from FEMA on some of these expenditures, but I did want to note that the reimbursement could lag 3 to 5 years on that reimbursement. So with that, I have a recommendation and can open it up to any questions from the commission.
Commissioners, questions, comments for Devin? Okay. I would ask the city clerk if there are any audience comments, but
Are there any audience comments? No.
okay.
We could take a motion.
Is there a motion?
I move that we accept the Hurricane Helene and Milton emergency expenditures following City Charter Section 2-288, emergency procurements.
I second.
City Attorney, if you'll please do a roll call.
Okay. Commissioner Marriott,
Yes.
Commissioner Robinson,
Yes.
Mayor Petrillo,
Yes.
Commissioner Mulholland.
Yes.
I'll now transmagrify back into Jenny as the clerk.
Thank you.
Motion passes 4-0. Next, we have ordinances. First reading of ordinance 2025-11.
Mayor, would you like me to read the ordinance? It is an ordinance of the City of St. Pete Beach, Florida, amending City Code Chapter 46, Environment, Article 2, Nuisances, Division 2, Abatement Procedure, Sections 4661 through 4666, and Chapter 46, Environment, Article 5, Chronic Nuisance, Property Code, Division 1, Chronic Nuisance Services, Section 46141 through 46152, to provide for due process special magistrate hearings and procedures for the abatement of nuisances, providing for codification, conflicts, severability, correction of scrivener's errors, construction, publication, and an effective date.
Thank you, City Attorney.
Mr. Mayor, I can introduce this ordinance. Our code enforcement director is here, but we worked in tandem to prepare this ordinance. What this does is modernize and update our nuisance abatement provisions. A nuisance is, for example, a yard that's collected a whole bunch of junk and debris. And normal code enforcement is insufficient to remove all that junk and debris. Then a declaration of nuisance can be declared. The city can actually remove the junk and return the property to its non-nuisance condition, and then seek a monetary judgment and put a lien on the property for the monies that we've expended. In order to do so, it's very important to have procedural due process, in that the current code puts all these responsibilities on the city manager. This update would put responsibilities on code enforcement officers to identify the public nuisance, call for a special magistrate hearing, and the special magistrate hearing would take evidence from both sides as to whether a nuisance exists or not. The magistrate would then give time to come into compliance. If it's not brought into compliance, then the nuisance can be abated by the city. And we've also made some provisions in here for lot mowing and tree trimming that need to occur faster. If we have a dangerous tree, we can go in there and we can declare that a nuisance and seek reimbursement for those fees, as well as lawns that are not kept up. So this is first reading of the ordinance. We asked for a motion to approve these updates and modernization of the nuisance abatement code and chronic nuisance code, so that we can begin to address some of the nuisances that are in the city and survive legal challenges.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions, comments?
Does that, will that also apply to, say, pools that after the hurricane, they haven't been maintained, let's say, and are...
We have a long list of nuisances. There are actually 33 of them. And I think that a pool could fall into this category, depending on how bad the pool was.
Right. I've just had reports of pools not being maintained since
Especially
after.
sometimes if the, sorry for interrupting.
That's,
Especially if the pools don't have fences or gates and they become what they call an attractive nuisance to children that could fall in. And even if they have no water in them, some children will go in and skateboard in them or play in them, and that's also attractive nuisance that can be abated.
It's also, they become a mosquito hatchery, especially this upcoming time of the year.
That's
That becomes a real problem.
I think I talked to somebody who said they were actually at somebody's house, they had fish.
It's a habitat.
Yeah.
It's okay in a koi pond, but not in a swimming pool.
Yeah, it's its own ecosystem there.
I do have a quick question on there's a section in here about a nuisance and then a section about a chronic nuisance. And so is it just direction from the city manager to staff, or is there, is there still going to be a normal code enforcement procedure that gives people adequate time to solve the problem on their own? Or is there some part of this code that would allow the code enforcement to say, that's a nuisance property and we're going to go in there and abate it and we're going to charge you whatever it costs us, without giving the property owner a chance to sort it out on their own?
Chronic nuisances is where there's a pattern of nuisance activity, and because of due process, we have to give them 15 days to come up with a plan to abate the nuisance. If they don't, then we can go ahead and abate the nuisance. So we first ask for a written plan how they're going to get all the junk and garbage out of their yard. We give them 15 days to do that and implement it. If it's not implemented, then we can go in and abate the nuisance ourselves.
And then is that the same on like mowing a property or trimming trees, or, I mean, what
shorter.
I'm looking at it maybe from the flip side of the coin that you'd be looking at it on. I want to make sure we're giving people ample opportunity to be notified and sort out their own problems before before we just start punishing them.
So we have in there, lawn mowing shall not require a hearing before the special magistrate unless a hearing is requested by the property owner. And charges for lots which are either vacant or improved, and the property owner shall be assessed in an amount equal to the cost to the city to have such lot mowing accomplished in addition to the administrative fee. And 3, tree trimming and tree removal shall not require a hearing before the special magistrate unless a hearing is requested by the property owner, and the property owner shall be assessed in an amount equal to the cost to the city to have such tree trimming accomplished in addition to the administrative fees set forth in this code. So we've viewed the lot mowing and the tree trimming as something that could happen more frequently and that's not as big a deal. We're going to go in and we're going to cut your grass, or we're going to go in and trim this dead branch off your tree. We'll go ahead and do that. We'll give you notice if you want a hearing about it. Maybe you don't want that tree branch taken down, you have orchids hanging on it or something, then you can request that hearing before the special magistrate, who will then hear and weigh all the evidence and make a decision as to whether it's a nuisance.
And they'll still get the same amount of time as you would for a normal code enforcement violation where you get 30 days.
They're all done by a case-by-case basis.
Okay, all right.
Even normal code violations are all done on a case-by-case basis, depending on the nature of the violation, how long it takes to remedy it. If you have to go get a permit, usually we give them a certain amount of time to prepare the application and apply for the permit. If it's something that they take action right away, then it should be less time. We also have, remember, the code enforcement citation available to us under the new ordinance as well to correct behavioral violations.
So it won't sneak up on anybody. Nobody's all of a sudden going to get a bill from the city for trimming trees or mowing the grass without having known anything about it.
That's the exact purpose of this ordinance, to give them procedural due process, notice, and an opportunity to be heard in front of a special magistrate who's an independent arbiter of the facts.
And then for the chronic nuisance that goes before the special magistrate, if somebody wanted to appeal that, that's the same way that they would appeal any magistrate.
It's directly to circuit court.
Okay.
It's under notice of appeal.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any audience comments?
I do. John Kurzman.
Thank you. John Kurzman, be here on the way. Can you zoom in on this? As someone who's gotten 2 violations on the second one now, I think I was given 3 weeks notice in order to put a new roof and windows on my house. I don't have a lot of faith in relying on just code enforcement to decide on a case-by-case basis as to when or how long people should be given. I think that it's very important to have a procedure that's documented. I think that it's terrific to do some of the things you're doing to be able to make sure that the city manager doesn't have to get involved in all these situations. I think it's very important that when you have nuisance properties that continually ignore the need to get their property under control, that's controlled. But the idea that a lawn that is not mowed as frequently as maybe a complaining neighbor or overzealous code enforcement officer believes, I think that's a problem. We don't live in an HOA, and even an HOA will have very clear and concise how many inches each blade of grass has to be. One of the reasons I've been very impressed with our magistrate is I remember a case about a year ago where a woman was here, and the situation was they were prosecuting her because they had sent her a notice about a tree branch or some trees on the back of her property. And she said, well, this is the city's property because there's a right-of-way of about 3 feet. You don't own all the way to the curb. And so she didn't even feel comfortable cutting the trees because they weren't hers. And they said, well, you should do it anyway, or then there was some confusion, and eventually, I don't remember who did it, and the magistrate actually said, well, show me in the code where the property owner is the one that's responsible for the right-of-way land. So we're not even addressing that here. So we have to figure out if we're going to address in this code those 2 or 3 feet that almost none of us own between our property and the curb. So issue A is the right-of-way. What are we going to do about that? And issue B is I do think we need to write into this for these two elements what the process will be. Do they get 15 days notice after they're served? Give them a little, maybe, give them some time, or if it's a first occurrence, second occurrence, what is the prescribed height? I don't want to just find out that, my lawnmower guy was a week late and I just got a bill or I'm getting notices and now I have to come and appeal. I just think that we just don't want to get out of hand. This is not an HOA environment. And I normally would trust it, but I've seen enough cases already now where there's issues with the right-of-way and there's issues with code enforcement just issuing things that you would think that maybe you could just write a nice letter and let someone know they need to do something, and it's not happening. So I think we need to be careful. Thank you.
Thank you. I know a few weeks ago somebody mentioned, and Commissioner Robbins, I'm not sure if you know anything about this, but I know we had a recommendation, a suggestion, or I think even somebody volunteered to put together a group of volunteers to help homeowners in these situations that may not even be here to know that there's something going on. So that if somebody does receive a letter or a violation, we can call the volunteers and say, hey, we've got a lawn here. Maybe we can, it'll be up to the volunteers. If I was the volunteers, I might do it once or twice per house. But then at some point, people are going to have.
At some point, yeah.
Was there any movement on that, or was there any follow-up on that, or just?
No, I have not followed up on that, so.
Okay.
Yeah, we have not, one, staff transition, and two, focus the volunteers currently on the permitting process, so we have not.
But there was a different group of volunteers, not the permit crew.
Oh, okay.
Right, not the permit crew, correct. Yeah.
I think there were some nonprofits and churches in Pinellas that were helping citizens demuck their homes and clean up after the hurricane. I don't know if those groups are still out there. They probably are in some fashion.
Okay.
I think that's mostly related to hurricane cleanups, but sometimes they can assist homeowners with cutting grass and things like that.
Sure. Okay.
I do have some concerns also about the noticing, especially right now with so many people not here. There's a number of properties in my neighborhood I know that are owned by, folks that don't live here full time in a good year. And I know that there have been some occasional code enforcement issues with where notifications are sent. I don't know that, I think the city does a good job of doing, following with the requirement of what is legal. I don't know that we always go the extra step of trying to help people out in a way that's reasonable. And I know that there have been a number of cases where code enforcement notices of violation are sent to an address that where the person who's actually in charge of the property never gets it. And so particularly when we're talking about going onto people's properties to mitigate things and then charging them for it, I would like to see us try to find a way to be extra conscientious about notice. There's a house in my neighborhood where the house was tied up in an estate from someone who is deceased, and the notices were going to the lawyer's office who was handling the estate, and we're never getting to the people who could actually do anything about it. And there's, that sounds like maybe a one-off, but I think that, there's probably 25 of those houses in my neighborhood where notice could very easily never get to the people who have the capacity to do something about it.
So the address where the property appraiser has to send property bills to is not sufficient?
That's where you send it under the statute.
Yeah, not always. I mean, they oftentimes particularly any property that's held in a trust or an LLC, the address on the property appraiser's website will be whoever is the registered agent of the LLC or the trustee, which can oftentimes be a lawyer or a registered agent that's a lawyer in Tampa, that's the registered agent for 75 LLCs, and the property is owned by a property owner, and the tenant is a renter, and, you know, by the time it trickles down to the person who can do something about it, the date of the magistrate hearing is long gone, and
They also
So the property,
post the property as well, but sometimes if there's an absentee owner, they don't see the
Yeah.
posting on the property.
so the property owner appoints somebody that has fiduciary responsibility to manage the property for them, usually a lawyer or somebody of that nature. And somehow it's the city's responsibility to make sure that person's doing their job? I'm not sure.
I'm just saying that, you know, under normal code enforcement procedures, I'm not that pressed about it. But when we're going to start talking about going on to people's private property and doing work that we're then charging them for, I would just like to see us be as conscientious as we can.
I think people need to be accountable, and the people they need to hire, the people they hire have to be accountable to them. And that's kind of how things work. And it shouldn't be the city's responsibility to chase down the fourth person down the line of who's responsible for mowing a lawn. They have a responsibility to have a fiduciary agent on record representing them for their property if they're not a full-time resident, and if that person that is the fiduciary responsible person doesn't execute their duties, then that problem is between the homeowner and the fiduciary. It is not the city's responsibility to get in the middle of that. The city has a duty to enforce the ordinances that we have in place, and to try to continue to go downstream on things is counterproductive, in my opinion. So
I think it could be as easy as sending the notice to the property address and the address in the tax assessors, in the property
We
tax
do that,
assessors.
and then we also post the property. During the foreclosure crisis, when there were many bank-owned properties, some cities hired third-party vendors who would manage a property registry where the bank that owned it was listed, as well as the property manager. And then it required a property manager to be appointed if it was an absentee home. That's something we could look at separately from this, or as part of second reading.
Yeah, I mean, we can see how it goes. I think also with the post-hurricane, a lot of houses are changing hands, and, you know.
A lot of people aren't home.
A lot of people
7
aren't
days.
home, yeah.
The city manager, is this going to be a profit center for us?
No.
No, this is going to cost us money.
Okay, so we're not going to be charging, so my lawn guys do it for $100. City's not going to charge people $250.
It's
No,
the
it would
actual
be-
cost.
It's the, it is the actual cost.
Okay, so, again, to both of your points is, one, we're not going to be heavy-handed. Second, people do need to take responsibility for it. You know, just like the pools, it creates problems for the neighbors that the neighbors wouldn't have to deal with, whether it's rodents, you know, other issues, whether it's mosquitoes in the pool that hasn't been maintained. And so, you know, yes, you know, we're in a unique situation. We want to be as accommodating as we can. I think posting on the property, sending out 2 different notices, and then only charging them what we would have been charged ourselves, which is probably less than what they could get it done for themselves. They're not paying anything extra. That if they'd done what they're supposed to be doing, you know, that's what they would have had to pay for anyway. So,
If I read this correctly, anyway, it says, provided the event you determine to take action set forth above, which would be the action to correct the problem, said nuisance, you may in writing notify the code enforcement officer, and upon determination that nuisance has been abated, the hearing shall be canceled. So you have the initial 7 days, then you go into a hearing, which is probably, depending upon how backed up they are, could be a month, could be 2 months, right? And so all that time period, you have to correct what it is. Again, as long as it's going to the correct address and you get it, all's good. But
And the magistrate also
And then the
gives
magistrate.
additional time usually.
yeah, they will if you have special circumstances. So,
okay, is there a motion?
I move to approve the first reading of ordinance 2025-11.
I second.
City Clerk, if you please do a roll call.
Commissioner Mulholland,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Marriott,
Yes.
Commissioner Robinson,
Yes.
Mayor Petrilla,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you. All right, next we have items for discussion. Commissioner Robinson, you had an item?
I just wanted to discuss, currently in our comp plan, we have it listed as one community meeting for development projects. That's a requirement of one community meeting. Just don't feel that is necessarily enough, considering you don't get much info on the first one at all. And sometimes you're gobsmacked by it. You didn't know anything was going on until you get the notice. You attend the meeting. You really don't have a set of questions because there's not a lot of info in front of you. And that's the only requirement currently that they have is one meeting. I feel that there should be additional meetings. Wanted to discuss this with everybody, whether what your thoughts were on it, to require more meetings than just one. I mean, because by the second meeting, you now have questions and they have more plans, so you can actually put those two together. And actually, you know, and by a third meeting, you actually have answers to your questions. You've seen a better set of plans, what it's going to look like, and then you can really get into real community involvement, which is what that's supposed to be to begin with. It's supposed to be community input. And the first one doesn't really feel like community input. It feels like we're all a little surprised at what's going on, and here's some basic questions on some basic designs that you have.
Mayor, if I might comment?
Certainly.
So if it's in the comp plan, we would amend the comp plan to add additional meetings, or you could also put it in the land development code. Another thing that some cities are doing to help citizens and communities is instead of just doing notice of the community meeting, they back it up a little further and they say notice an application has been filed for this property, and then they list what it's been filed for a conditional use, for a variance, for you can determine what types of projects you would want notice, things for more than a duplex or more than 3 units. You could require posting a notice that an application is filed in your neighborhood, so you know that there's something at City Hall that you can go look at to see what's being proposed, and you find out about it earlier rather than just a few days, 7 days before a meeting. So you can be more expansive than this minimum that the state statutes require if you desire. As long as this House Bill 1535 doesn't pass. And if that happens, then it might be considered more burdensome to have more meetings, but it might not, because if you work it into the regular timetable and it's not extending the duration of the permit reviews or development reviews, which are controlled by state statute, and could be argued that it's not more burdensome.
Yeah, and actually I do believe that's in the LDC. Anyway, it's the one meeting's in there, so it would be an add to the LDC or amendment.
So one of the, and you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, but if I understand it correctly, the community meeting is actually required before the site plan review.
I wish Brandon was here because he would be able to tell us. I can look that up and provide you with a memo that talks about all the different notices that are required. That might be helpful for you to decide what you want to do.
There's a 99% chance I'm right on this.
Okay.
Historically, we've just it's just the way we've always done it, is we've done them before TRC as part of the initial application process. I think what Commissioner Robinson's proposing is a good idea, that we codify it, or look at codifying it, or we keep the one that's before site plan review, but then also add, and it could be as simple as to stay within the statutory 180 days, correct? We could have something as simple as, applications in, first meetings due within 30 days, second meeting within 60 days, TRC by 90 days. And for the vast majority, those things will still, help us stay compliant, and then we'll still have the one more meeting, which, as far as I remember, we've never actually had one closer to site plan, because we've not ever had a project go that far, probably.
I wonder if it would be more useful to have a second community meeting after the technical review committee, and that way if there's changes that city staff is going to require of the project, then that information is available at the second community meeting rather than 2 before then.
So the purpose of the community meetings, as outlined in the comprehensive plan, is for the staff to use the comments and questions from residents at the community meeting for input at TRC.
It's for TRC, yeah.
So I think you could do it, you could have, one community meeting, collect feedback, bring that to the staff, whether they do a TRC or not. I mean, they're going to be having a conversation with the developer after the first meeting and say, hey, here are the comments, questions, concerns that we have after the first round. And the developer gets a second stab at it, 30, 45, 60 days later, whatever the process is. They come back and say, hey, here's what we heard you say last time. Here's some of the adjustments that we've made in talking with the staff. And then the second round, the second meeting would provide for additional feedback opportunities. And then it goes to TRC. I'm just giving a general idea. I'm not saying this is the way it has to happen. I'm just saying this is how it could happen, for example. But the whole purpose, when you look at the Land Development Code and Comprehensive Plan, the whole purpose behind the community meeting, as it's explained, is that we are to collect, as Mr. Kurzman would tell you, is to collect those comment cards and to provide those comment cards to the staff, so that the staff can use that in, establishing conditions, looking at, the scope and challenges of the project. Considering how many hoops we make some homeowners jump through just to get a permit for their house and the review process, I don't think that, asking a developer to have 2 meetings and, review process of their project that will have a lasting, eternal impact on the city. I don't know.
I don't think it's a lot to ask.
Yeah. But that's something that city attorney could look into and see if.
I can get together with Brandon and bring something back to you in a memo.
Sure. Just an idea of what could be done.
Some alternatives, okay.
Yep. Okay. Interesting. All right. Next we have staff reports. City clerk.
I don't have anything, thank you.
City manager.
Thank you, Mayor and City Commission. I just wanted to remind you all that our new city clerk is beginning her first day on May 5th, so we're tracking close to an onboarding. And wanted to thank Jenny and continue to thank her for all of her assistance and help to the team. It's been seamless, so we really appreciate it.
You are welcome.
Second, I wanted to acknowledge that staff is aware that permitting and any sort of repair to residential and commercial has continued to be challenging. Many of the challenges that we're facing now, we went into the storms with, which included lack of staff, lack of just really bandwidth to train, any sort of process improvement. There wasn't much time to invest in that prior to the storm, as well as technology had been a challenge. And so a few things, wanted to point out that despite the storms, I think we have improved our turnaround on permit issuance. I think before the storm, we were tracking about 90 days to wait for a permit, and we're averaging about 2 weeks on hurricane repair. It is a little bit longer lead time on the demolitions and raising of properties and new construction of an entire home, but those are areas that we are looking to improve as well. I say all this that on the staffing side, you know, we have just onboarded 7 people with another one coming on. So trying to retain any sort of training and knowledge we were able to capture during these last several months. We're trying to hold on to it and give us the capacity to look at the process improvement on the human side. On the technology side, we have been working with our vendor iWork, which many of the city now know that software program because they've had to use it. And we're looking at an upgrade and an interface with the community that we're hoping is going to improve digital intake process, so hopefully reducing the front desk traffic. We're looking at an automated assignment of permits to the appropriate planners, inspectors, reviewers, so that it'll increase status tracking accuracy and visibility to the end user. We have heard from many that, you know, I try to contact the person, they don't contact me, but now they'll see who it's actually assigned to and have the ability to communicate. We're looking at automated notifications to improve overall responsiveness and turnaround, so we're not just a black hole that you email City Hall and you don't know if we ever got your email or your notes, so looking at that improvement. This enhancement's also going to improve our document storage and retrieval, reducing paper handling, which is prone to errors. If the more paper you transfer and can't track, can cause challenges. And lastly, adaptable to changing permitting requirements. So it'll allow city staff to modify systems as we figure out how things are moving through the work process, that the system will be able to be changed quicker. So I just wanted to make that announcement. We are aware, we're working on it, and we finally have reached this point where we are actually actively implementing this enhanced technology that was planned for months ago. So thank you. End of report.
Just as a follow-up to that, when is the report from the Recovery Task Force coming before the commission, please?
Oh, thank you. So we are preparing to track to you, I believe, May 13th, so the next meeting. And then I also forgot to report that you did not get a hurricane recovery report tonight, if you forgot or didn't notice. We're going to move to monthly now, and you're going to start to see a blend of recovery, but also preparation for the upcoming hurricane season. And then if all goes well through the end, we'll probably pace that cadence through October, towards the end of this hurricane season. And if all goes well, then we will wrap up that report, and you won't hear from us until hopefully ever again on a hurricane recovery report.
Thank you. City Attorney?
Nothing this evening, thank you.
Thank you, sir. District 4.
A couple of things, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank Mr. Camden Mills for having a comprehensive meeting with the Paso Grove Community Association yesterday. He took a lot of time, he answered a lot of questions for the association, and I think it was well received. So I want to thank him again. He's getting a lot of kudos tonight. Just don't get too big-headed back there, Camden. And then there'll be a party under the lights on May 3rd, 8th Avenue, Paso Grove. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. District 2.
Just wanted to say I've started my library hours again. Trying to go for Tuesdays when the library, with its new hours from 5 p.m. to 5:45. They want us out of there promptly at 6. So, but that'll be starting Tuesday, April 29th, and then it'll be May 6th and May 20th. So it's the odd weeks that we don't have commission meetings until we get to June, and then it gets all messed up. But I'll announce those when we get closer.
All right, District 1.
Nothing really to report, but I did want to thank the city staff and the city manager. I know everybody's been working really hard, and I've gotten a number of comments from residents lately who have said things like, wow, I've finally realized that like we're doing way better out here than a lot of the other towns around us. And I was really mad for a while, but things seem really good now, and I feel like I'm really starting to notice a difference. So I just wanted to pass on the gratitude and express mine as well. I think staff is doing a great job.
Thank you. Tomorrow morning, we're having a breakfast for all of our city volunteers. As many of you know, we've had 30-plus individuals helping out with the permitting department for the last almost 6 months. Many of them are residents. Actually, all of them are residents here, but just donating their time and resources to help their neighbors recover. And so tomorrow we're just doing a small.
Thursday, right? Is that Thursday?
Thursday.
Scared me. I know.
You sent me looking at my phone
Same
going,
thing, yeah.
wait a minute, wait.
So just as a thank you to all of them, as a small token of appreciation, just to say thank you. We're hosting a thank you breakfast for them. I hope to see most of you there. And then the only other item I have, this is one of the odd months of the year where the Big C does not coincide with the PSTA. So I serve on the PSTA board as well. They are meeting tomorrow. Big C is next Thursday, and I just want to see if Commissioner Mary had any objections if I attend that meeting.
Absolutely not.
Okay. Great. So with that, thank you, everyone, and we are adjourned.